welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. So we're still in the Easter season. Isn't that awesome? Isn't it great to be Catholic and you get a 50-day Easter season? I mean, who else can say that? No one. Anyway, I am very much enjoying this Easter season. I've noticed all sorts of lovely little gifts from the Lord in nature, and spring has sprung. So I'm first of all wondering, how is your 50-day resurrection challenge going that I gave you last week? That being, what do we do after Resurrection Day? What do we do? How do we carry that through and keep going through the Easter season? And in the last episode, if you haven't watched or listened to it, go back and I give you some handy dandy tips and ideas about how to, draw more people to the Lord with the way that we're doing things. So let me know how you're doing with that challenge. Also, I would like to help promote a program that's happening, and it's a 7-week program for the Easter season from Many Parts Ministries called Fire 50. And this 50-day journey is completely free to join, which is awesome, and will help light a fire in your hearts and spark your faith. So get started now. It's not too late. Tell your friends and your family, you can all join together. I will put a link in the show notes, so you just go click on it and join that. It's already going, but jump on the bus. It'll be really a good thing for you to do for the Easter season, the remainder of it. And one of my former guests, Jill Simons, who came on to talk about charisms, she is a part of this Many Parts Ministry. That's how I heard about it. So I hope you join that. And also I wanted to give a little heads up on a couple of series we have coming up in the near future with educator Charles Merritt, who is our, part of our Fresh Catholic team. And he's going to be doing a series on the 10 Commandments, which I think will be amazing. And also, he will be doing a study on the book of Haggai. Now, I was thinking, the book of Haggai, I don't know. I don't know much about that. But if you keep an eye out, we're going to have a trailer for that thing he's, what's the word I want to call it? The course he's doing. So you'll have to check that out because it's really going to make you want to watch that series. Like when I saw it, I was like, oh, I have to be a part of that right away. So keep an eye out for all of that. So that's my little preview section. I also want to say we will be having more guests coming up. So that's exciting. So for right now, the past couple weeks, maybe the next couple weeks are just little old me. So I'm glad that you're here. And I would love for you, like I said in the last episode, to email me if you have a very interesting conversion story. You converted to Catholicism. How did that come about? And let's see if we can get you on as a guest. I am going to be starting a new ongoing series. It won't be consecutive. It'll kind of be starting today with this episode. And every now, periodically, we will add to the series with conversion stories. So today, this first episode of that, Path to Catholicism, is the Lori Balderas story. That would be me. So, who better to start it than the host of the show? Now, I already did an episode called The Conversion, and it's like episode number 3, I think, of Fresh Catholic when I started way back in January of 2023. And you can certainly go back and listen to that. But my husband, Simon Balderas, and he's my producer as well, made he was talking one day and he had this idea and he said, you should go back and do a couple of your episodes from your point of view today, because things certainly have changed since I started this podcast. The way I do the podcast is different. My take on things is constantly evolving as a Catholic and just as a human being. And so I decided today would be good since we've just come through the Easter season. We just had the Easter Vigil. Many, many people became Catholic over that weekend, which is so thrilling and exciting. And so I thought, okay, let's do this at Fresh Catholic and let's have these conversion stories starting with mine. So anyway, to do that, I kind of I'm going to do it differently than the last episode I did on the conversion, because I'm going to kind of combine a couple of those episodes. I had done an episode called The Beginning, which was kind of my origin story, how I was raised, just my background and everything. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to focus mainly on the religious part of my background and my conversion story. So you can also go back and listen to that. The Beginning and the Conversion are two episodes I had way back when. So just to know a little bit about me, and if you've been listening, no pun intended, religiously to me since the beginning, I think you have a pretty good sense of me, where I came from, why I'm doing what I'm doing, what makes me tick, what drew me to the church. I think most of you who've been with me the entirety know those things. But for those of you who are new or kind of fresh into this podcast of mine, you might be interested in this. And so I think, in order to know why somebody is the way they are or why they think the way they do, you kind of do have to go back to the beginning of their life and figure out, oh, where did this person come from? Like, what is their story, their origin story? So I was raised in a very small town with my family. Was back in the day, it was very typical that you had your mom and dad and siblings all under the same roof. There wasn't as many divorces and breakups back then. So I was fortunate to be raised in, mom, dad, brother, sister, who were older than me. And then there was me. And my dad was raised Catholic. He was a cradle Catholic. My mom was a Methodist, raised a Methodist. And my dad turned away from the Catholic Church, probably when he was around 30, I'm imagining. And my mom continued on being a Methodist. My brother and sister were baptized into the Catholic Church when they were babies. I was not, because by that time my dad had turned away. And my mother, not all the time, would go to church, but she would go on occasion. And I happened to be baptized into the Methodist Church when I was a baby. That is pretty much where I feel like where my religious background ended. I have very sparse memories of going to church. I wasn't really raised in any religion at all. I remember going to vacation Bible school at a community church, which was fun. I loved doing the art projects, but that's pretty much all I knew about it. I knew Jesus was a nice man who loved children. That's what I knew about Jesus. And I would do a little prayer every night. Thank you, God, for such a good day. That was my prayer. That was my prayer probably until I was, I want to say, 22 years old. Thank you, God, for such a good day. It was better than nothing, right? Anyway, it wasn't to say that my parents weren't great parents. And my mother is very well known for being a very kind, loving, sweet, friendly, good person. I was raised being told, as long as you're a good person, you're going to go to heaven. And I thought, oh, that's great. So I'll just be a good person and everything's solved. Easy peasy. And my dad honestly never really talked about religion at all. I remember going to visit my sweet little grandfather, my little Italian grandpa, and he had a picture over his bed of Jesus, the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I remember just going in and staring at that and having no idea what was going on in that picture, why this man had his heart outside of his body. I didn't know anything about it. I never asked. It probably scared me and I didn't want to ask because I probably didn't want to know. But that's kind of, how my childhood was just, I had an idyllic childhood, but there was no religion involved. That just never came into it. We were all about Santa and stockings and Easter bunnies and Easter eggs. And that's pretty much it. But I did have a happy little childhood and everything was wonderful and great, honestly. But it wasn't until I headed into my teenage years when most people, I would think, have some struggles and things in their teenage years. You know, you're becoming independent, you're testing the waters, you're certainly testing your parents' rules and regulations. And I was no different. If you want to know more about the nitty-gritty of that, go back and listen to the beginning. I get pretty graphic and detailed about it because I think if you're going to go through struggles and trials, if you can't come out with them and be honest about it so that you can help other people, or so other people can relate to you and think, oh man, she's really been through it and she really understands, some of these things that I might be going through or my family is going through or my friends are going through. If you're not honest about it and you don't come out with it, I always like to help people with my stories. But I definitely had a troubled teen life, and I just had no compass, no rails, no consequences. I got away with an awful lot that I shouldn't have gotten away with. And I think my mom is very proper British. She doesn't want to know, like, la, 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 I'm not looking or seeing you. I'm not hearing what's happening. That was kind of to my detriment, honestly. And when I would get in trouble for something, my dad was typically the one that would put his foot down. And when my dad would finally do that, I would stop. Whatever he told me to stop, I would do. It took an awful long to get there. But I didn't have God. I didn't have him in my life. I didn't have him on my radar. I look back and think I have no idea how I made it through that time because I was so reckless and stupid and I honestly probably shouldn't even be here today. But looking back now, I think, well, I guess that guardian angel was really watching out for me that I didn't even know I had. So I think that's the only thing I can attribute it to was God had bigger plans for me. He had a future for me. He certainly saved me when I didn't even know he was doing that. And I'm going to give him full credit because it was for no other reason that I'm here today than that that God had a plan to save me because he had something in store for me. And so when we come back, because I'm going to take a short break, I'm going to talk to you about the next phase of my life and how I became Christian. So we'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to witness the miraculous and walk where saints have walked? This is your chance. Join me, Lori Balderas, host of Fresh Catholic Podcast, and Father Matthew Miguel, as we walk with you through Italy's most sacred sites. From the Eucharistic miracles of Lanciano and Orvieto to the peace of Assisi, your heart will be transformed by these extraordinary moments of grace. You'll walk the hallowed streets of Rome, step into the history of the Vatican, and witness the places where faith has flourished for centuries. Each stop deepens your journey. Each miracle renews your soul. We invite you to join us on an unforgettable, life-changing experience.
Join us and let your faith come alive in Italy.
And we're back. So after those teenage years, I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and I'm doing air quotes because he wasn't so sweet. And again, if you want to hear more about that, go back and listen to the beginning episode. And again, I don't know how I made it through that marriage. It was very short-lived. It was very tumultuous. It was very abusive in many different ways. And I got out of that situation. And so I am grateful for that. And again, I think God definitely had a hand in that. Now, because I got married, I was very, very young when I got married. I was 20. And I kind of went from that marriage into another just wild time of my life. I was, in my early 20s. I was doing a lot of things, very dangerous things I should not be doing. And I ended up marrying a friend of mine, and his name was John, and he came at just the right time when I really needed kind of a hero to come in and save the day. And he did. He came in, and he and I got together very quickly. I became pregnant, and then we got married, so we did it out of order. He came from a very Christian family. I, again, was from no religion. And I remember I was very standoffish about the whole Christian thing with his family. I even told him, I will not become Christian. And he said, that's fine. We'll do whatever you want to do. He's very supportive in that. And we ended up moving away out of the area where we both were being raised in the small town. And we moved away and we lived in the country. And there wasn't a lot of distractions in that mountainous area we lived in. And one night we went to dinner at somebody's house, and his name was Chandler West. And it was he and his wife invited us to dinner, probably with my in-laws. And I just loved everything about Chandler West. I just thought he was an amazing, beautiful, kind, peaceful, honest, magnetic person. And I just left that dinner saying to my husband, John, I just want a piece of what that guy has. I want that, whatever he's got going. I just loved everything about him. I loved his family. I loved his house. I loved him. And my husband's like, well, he's Christian. And I said, okay, well, let's try his church, So we went to his church. I immediately got sucked into the church. I loved it. I just decided Jesus was going to be my savior, and I didn't know what that entailed. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I just wanted to know everything I could know about Jesus Christ. And so I went and got a children's Bible, and I read the children's Bible because in my mind, Noah, Adam and Eve, Jesus, they were all at the same time. In my mind, I had no idea there was like a chronological way that the Bible worked out, and that all these people, I just had no idea. I know that might sound silly, but I read a children's Bible, and it was like, made it very clear to me, and it was in a very simple way. And I just, progressed from there and ended up, we would go to church all the time. Every event we would go to was church related. Everybody we interacted with were Christians, and I absolutely loved it. And then soon thereafter, after we moved up there, we probably were there a year, I ended up getting into a horrific accident. And if you want to hear about that, go back and listen to that episode, The Accident. It was a life-changing accident in which I almost died. Both my children almost died. I was paralyzed after that accident. So it's definitely an episode you're going to want to go back and listen to. But I personally believe, because I had just become Christian and I was so in love with Jesus and I was so submerged in this Christian faith, I think Satan was mad, and I think Satan was trying to wipe me out, and he almost succeeded. But because of the grace of God, because of the prayers that were said for me, and because it wasn't my time yet, and God again he wasn't done with me yet. If he was done with me, that was the moment that, certainly would have been, well, this is it. And that didn't happen. And I am a true believer in the fact that there was a fight between good and evil. In my accident story, I had definite feelings of Satan in the picture. I had definite feelings of angels there protecting me and helping me at the guidance of God and the instruction of God. And here I am. That happened like 35 years ago. So here I am. And it's been a long process. I'm permanently disabled, but I'm here to tell the story. My children are alive. Thank you, Jesus. And so it gave me even more faith. I became even more faithful because of that. And then because of my condition, because I had a lot of physical problems, we needed to move from that safe happy mountainous community we lived in, Christian community, and had to move back where I was raised. And at first I thought that was going to be great. I thought, oh, we're just going to start going to church. I'll just pick up where we, left off up there with this, excited spirit. And I got back to our hometown and tried different churches and just didn't feel it. I didn't feel at all good in any of the churches. I'm not down, bashing any of the churches in our town. It's just, for me, I had been in this place where it was so pure and beautiful, and the people were also genuine and truly lovers of God, and they just like glowed with the love of Christ. And I came down here back to our town and I was like, okay, well, I don't like it. So I made my own religion, and I know that's not the right thing to do, but at the time I didn't know what else to do. I thought I have to keep teaching my children about Jesus. I have to keep connected with the Lord in some way. I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I just made up my own religion. I taught my children Bible study. I homeschooled my oldest son, and part of his curriculum was Bible study, to which then the other two definitely, soaked all that in. And I had some Christian friends, but, it just wasn't the same. And I knew Jesus was with me, and I had a sense of God and Jesus, but it was kind of my own narrative of it. I don't feel I knew as much as I wish I I know a lot more now, let's put it that way. But back then, I just felt like it was just kind of the bare minimum, honestly. And I thought, okay, I guess this is just what it is. I guess this is what everybody experiences, is when you're a Christian, this is just how it is. And I just accepted it, and I kind of went along. But I have to tell you, I don't think I was the best Christian. I think I was a good Christian for quite a long time, but not being a part of a church and not being part of a structured community, Christian community, that definitely weakened my faith and weakened my devotion to the Lord. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but looking back, I definitely see it. And I just have to tell you, I kind of just started slowly slipping downhill. I started acting out. I would be verbally abusive to people. I would be too tough on people. I was very judgmental. I was very superficial. A lot of that had to do with my ex-husband. John, he was kind of a superficial guy. He's a great guy, but he was very superficial. And I kind of fell into that. I was watching things I shouldn't be watching. I was involved in things I shouldn't have been involved in. And at the time, again, it was just kind of my lifestyle. I'm not condoning it, and I'm not, justifying it. I'm just telling you the truth. I just thought, well, this is my life. Yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'm doing these things, but I'm a Christian. But I didn't feel super great, And ultimately it ended up where John, after 25 years, decided that we were not going to be married anymore. And he didn't even really want to work it out. Like, I wanted to go to therapy, which I did. He didn't want to do that. And he was just kind of done after 25 years. There was, again, no accountability or no structure to it of like, well, is that it? I mean, aren't we shouldn't we try to work this out? I mean, I came from a background of my parents had been married for, years and years and years. And so I was under the impression, I was married to this person. We had children together. We were starting to have grandchildren together. Shouldn't we try to keep this together? But he apparently wasn't in that same mindset. So he left. He was done. We got a divorce, and that was that. And right after that happened, I have to say also, I didn't act in the best way. I, probably that's one of the worst times of my life being a Christian. I just kind of went off the deep end. I had a boyfriend. I would go stay with him. You know, I don't feel I was very focused on Jesus at all. He was probably over in the corner and I behind a bunch of boxes and out of sight, out of mind, because he was back to not being on my radar anymore. I think I was disillusioned with a lot of things. I thought, okay, well, what's the point of any of this, honestly? And I kind of went into, I would say a little bit of a slope down. And then, oh, and I'm sorry, let me back up, because there was a distinct moment where I had, my husband's telling me he's leaving. I had this big, beautiful house. I had all the fancy things. I had a fancy car, beautiful pool, all these fancy things. And I remember being so sad and miserable and praying, going in the back corner of my house and saying, Lord, I am willing to give up all this if I can just be happy and have I'm so unhappy. If I'm willing to give up all this, meaning my house, I had 6 dogs that I adored, all the things I was willing to give up. And well, God listened, because soon after that, everything was gone. The husband, the house, and even the dogs. So when I come back, I'm going to tell you how things turned around, and I'm going to tell you my conversion story. So when I come back, we'll talk about that. Be right back. Let me tell you about all things Fresh Catholic. So buckle up. We have a podcast with weekly topic episodes and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily Mass readings, on all platforms and YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. That would really help. Our website, freshcatholic.com, has an online store with merchandise and coffee, a blog, comics, info about our pilgrimage to Italy in September of this Jubilee year, and Fresh Catholic courses with educator Charles Merritt, including the Hail Mary, the Our Father, Sin, Sacraments and Grace, Advent, Angels, and Virtues. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic with short videos every day. Email me at lori@freshcatholic.com. I'd love to hear from you. And please consider becoming a Patreon or sponsor to help support our mission of drawing people to the faith or back to the faith. Phew! Spread the word and join the fun. Thanks so much. Bye. And we're back. So after my divorce, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I had to sell this house. Where was I going to go? What was I going to do? And my youngest son and I were living in the house together. He had to figure out what he was going to do because I couldn't afford the house anymore. And my older son was out of the house. My daughter was married and out of the house. My son and I had to decide what to do. So he, he got an apartment and everything. But I happened to be on Facebook one day, and I decided, I need to expand my horizons. I only had maybe 7 friends on Facebook, and my children were very picky about who I was friends with on Facebook. They didn't want some crazy person coming after me. So I just started friend requesting anybody and everybody on Facebook that I knew from my town. And I thought, well, that's safe because they're not strangers, because we're a very close-knit town. And many of us are still friends after all these years. We were all raised there. Our families still live there. So I put out friend requests to all kinds of people and heard back from people. And when they would email me back, I'd say, oh, thank you for accepting my friend request. I hope you're doing well. And they would tell me what they were up to. So I ended up doing a friend request for this really handsome gentleman called Simon Balderas. And he got back to me and he was very nice, and he said, hey, Lori, thanks, for requesting me. And it was very short. And it was like, hey, Simon. And that was that. About a month or so later, I got this long message from him, private message, and I thought, oh, heavens, what's happening here? And he said to me, Lori, I don't know if I told you, or he said, Lori, I owe you a lunch or a dinner. And he said, I don't know if I told you, but I'm a filmmaker and I was making a movie in the meadow. We have a meadow in our town. And he said, and I was full cast, full crew, all this equipment out. And this man comes driving in, very angry at me, threatening to kick me off the property, have me arrested, all these things. And he whips out his business card and hands it to me. And it said Rick Bizaccia. And I'm reading this thinking, oh my gosh, that's my brother. And my brother was in charge of the meadow. And so I was laughing because I was thinking, what on earth did he say to poor Simon Balderas? And it ended up where he said, Simon says, I know your sister. And he said, do you know Lori Bizaccia? And he said, yes, that's my sister. And so he said, oh yeah, we're really good friends. And I know your mom too, because Simon knew my mother from having his teeth straightened at the orthodontist she worked at. So my brother let Simon finish filming his movie there. So it ended up, Simon and I went out on this thing that I didn't know if it was a date or not, but we fell in love very quickly. And I just, again, couldn't get enough of him either. But Simon had been raised Catholic, but had turned away from the Catholic Church for about, I want to say 25 to 30 years. And at the time when he and I started dating, he was going to Christian churches. So when we kind of got together, he asked if I wanted to join him at one of the local Christian churches. And I said, no, I don't. Not, absolutely not. I wasn't really into their vibe. As I said before, they weren't my cup of tea. I just wasn't interested. And he didn't push me either. And so soon after that, Simon and I moved in with each other. He needed to move out of his place. I needed to move out of my place. We moved in together and we were living together. And so we would go traveling together for his work. We went up to Canada, and Simon and I love museums and architecture and buildings and things. And so we were kind of wandering around and we went into this church and we walked in and I just looked around and I just got this huge wave and sense of something. I'm getting chills even thinking about it. Something very special and miraculous that I couldn't put my finger on. And we walked in and Simon said, oh, wow, this is really beautiful. And I said, I love it in here. And he said, you do? And I said, I do. I think it's beautiful. I was just almost speechless and breathless, And he said, well, this is a Catholic church. And I said, okay, like, cool. What does that mean? I don't know. And so he said, well, are you interested in going to a Catholic church? And I said, sure. So he said, okay. So when we got home down to where we were living, we went into Our Lady of the Assumption Church in Ventura, California. And we walked in and it was very big and very bright. It wasn't like the church in Canada, but I still had a sense in that church. And I was thinking, wow, I don't know what it is about this church. It was interesting because it's such a ginormous church, but for some reason I felt very secure and very nurtured, So we sat in the very back pew. I just was taking it all in and I was just thinking, I don't know what these people are doing. They all seem to know what they're doing. They're standing, sitting, kneeling, saying the same prayers. I was just really taking it in. And they announced RCIA was going to be starting in 3 weeks. And I was like, what is RCIA? And Simon said, well, it's, you can't just be Catholic. You have to if you're not born into it, you have to study to be Catholic. And I was like, oh. And so I went home and Googled what it took to be Catholic. What were the requirements? Because I thought I never like to take anything on unless I'm sure I can do it. So I looked it up. I thought, okay, I think I could do this stuff. It seems okay. And doing some research on it, I realized, it's not like just going to Protestant church where you can kind of like take it or leave it, kind of go sometimes, kind of not go sometimes. It's more like a commitment and a lifestyle. And I don't know, could I do that? I'm not sure. And so I got the book Catholicism for Dummies, which I highly recommend. I bought that. I pored over it. I read it. It made sense to me. I kept envisioning myself in this religion. Could I do it? What would my family think? What was it going to entail? Signed up for RCIA with Deacon Don and went to every class. And I realized, oh, this is really going to change my life. This is definitely taking my relationship with Jesus to a whole other level. This is something that I kind of got that wave again of, I need to know the most I can know about Jesus. I need to know the most I can about God. I need to know the most I can about this church and this faith. And so I soaked in everything that I was learning. I couldn't get enough of it. When I wasn't in my RCIA class, I was at home reading about the church. I was reading about the faith. I was learning prayers. And there was a point where I came to Simon and I said, I need to move out of this house because I'm trying to become Catholic. We're not supposed to be living together. And that was a really hard decision because I loved Simon. I wanted to be with Simon as many hours of the day I could. And I'd never been alone in my whole life. So I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I know I have to do that. And so I moved into a little apartment by myself. Again, I was, 49 years old and I'd never lived by myself ever. I'd always overlapped. I lived with my parents and I lived with my first husband and I lived with my second husband. And then I lived with my son and then lived with Simon. So it was very scary on one hand, but I knew it's what I needed to do because I wanted to be really, very clear about what I was doing and doing it in the right way as to not hurt my relationship with the Lord or damage my progress becoming a Catholic and the path I was on. And I remember I saw a friend of mine who was Christian that I knew from back in the day. And she asked if Simon and I were together still. And I said, yeah. And she said, where do you live? And I said, well, he lives in Ojai and I live in Ventura. And she said, oh, well, why did you do that? And I said, oh, because we can't live together because I'm becoming Catholic. And she said, but why can't you live together? Who would know? And I said, God would know. I pointed up and she said, oh, okay. And I just thought, Anyway, so I went through the Easter Vigil. I became Catholic with my dad's blessing. I was very afraid to tell my dad that I wanted to become Catholic because I thought he would look down on me for it. I thought he would be upset since he turned away from the church. And when I told him that, I was going to become Catholic and I was taking RCIA classes, there was this long pause. And then he looked at me and he said, I think that's the best religion for you. And I said, really? Why? And he said, because it's very traditional and it's very structured. And I think it's very enriching. And I think that, I support you in that, which just lifted a huge weight off of me because I always wanted my dad's approval on everything. I would have become Catholic no matter if he gave me his blessing or not, to be honest with you. But just the fact he did give me his blessing meant the world to me. And he consequently gave me all the family artifacts from, my grandmother and everything. I'm the only Catholic, in the family, remaining in the whole family, the whole Basacha family. So that means something to me. I know that if my grandma and grandpa were here today, they would be very happy for me. And so that was a blessing. I don't know that my mom is as happy about it as I don't know if my dad was happy, but he was supportive. My mom is very tentatively supportive. She knows that I love being Catholic. She knows that this is the most important thing in my life. So she supports that, but she certainly doesn't like to hear about it. So if I'm ever talking about Jesus too much, she certainly is the first one to say, okay, that's enough. And I'm expected to stop and move on. So, my family isn't super supportive about me being Catholic, but I'm not veering off course. There's nothing that's going to knock me off of course of being completely devoted to Jesus, to being completely devoted to the Catholic faith. And even if things in the church are going haywire or people in the church give me a struggle, I'm not there for that. I'm there. I can't base my faith on the human beings that are involved. I'm basing my faith on Jesus Christ, my Savior and Lord. And he's with me all day, every day, 24/7. He is watching over me, protecting me. He's my compass, my guide. He keeps me on track. I honestly don't really go to humans anymore for counseling or advice because he's my first one to go to. I need to run everything through him and ask him to help me because that's just where I'm at today. I struggle with trust issues. I struggle with abandonment issues, and he never lets me down. He is always with me. He never pushes me on the wrong path. And I know with him, I'm safe and secure. And there's no better feeling than that. And I'm a work in progress. I have a lot of things I'm still trying to fix, work on. I need his help all day, every day. So he's the one I go to. Simon and I ended up getting married in the Catholic Church, which was a total blessing since both of us had been divorced but neither of us had been married in the Catholic Church. So that was good. But we ended up getting married in the church and have our sacrament of marriage, which is, just beautiful and wonderful. And I'm the wedding coordinator there now. I work with Deacon Don, who was my RCIA teacher, and he married us. And so I absolutely think that the sacrament of marriage is such an important part of being Catholic. And Simon and I have had a real rough time of it the whole time we've been married. And we had an extra rough patch and we were separated for 3.5 years. And our faith and our relationship with Jesus is the thing that kept us together. There were many times where I was like, I don't think we're going to continue. I struggled with that. But if Jesus hadn't been in our marriage, if we didn't have a covenant and a sacrament with our Lord, I don't know if we would have made it. And he is just the absolute glue that keeps us together. And Simon and I got back together, and I think our marriage is better now than it's ever been. It's not to say everything is smooth sailing. We certainly have a lot of things going on, a lot of chaos in our life, and we're hoping that the Lord is going to provide for us to be able to have more peace and calm and harmony in our life, so that we can just focus more on the Lord instead of this outside interference that we just have relentlessly attacking us and our marriage. But we feel strong and safe with the Lord. Because I became Catholic, Simon came back to the Catholic faith. He was my sponsor in the RCIA. So I joke and say, God got a twofer the day I became Catholic, because Simon came back too. And we just both feel like our relationship you know, is so strong. I'm so grateful that my husband's Catholic, that he especially returned back to the faith, because I do like to talk about it all the time. This is a part of my all day, every day. If I didn't have him to be able to talk to about it, I'd be very sad because, you know, if you're not married to a person who shares in your faith or who wants to, you know, I know that he's always trying to strengthen my faith and I'm trying to strengthen his faith. And we're trying to, you know, really be a united front with our walk with the Lord, that just makes it even better, you know? And so I think becoming Catholic was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, I have happy things of, you know, children being born, grandchildren being born. There's many happy experiences I've had in my life, but the most important thing I've ever done was to become Catholic, to be a part of this faith, to be devout and wanting everything about my day to build up my relationship with Christ, to become stronger with that, to become more and more holy every day. Again, I'm human, I make mistakes, but God forgives me. I repent of my sins. I go to confession regularly. I pray for his help and guidance. And I just know that he's with me, filling me with love and light. And my goal is to spread it to other people, because I want everybody to feel the way I do, and to not have that emptiness, and to not have that lack of a compass or lack of a path. You know, if you're feeling lost and lonely, or you're feeling off course, or you just don't think you have anything to live for or anything that is worthwhile in your life, you need to really think about it, pray about it, and open your heart and your mind and your soul to the Lord, so that he can welcome you in. Excuse me, you will not be sorry. And nothing better than to be a follower and lover of Christ. So with that being said, that's my story. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you ever want to talk about Jesus, email me. All right. Well, thanks for coming today. I appreciate you. Thank you. Love you. Bye.